Hi, I'm Michelle Grace Hunder.
And I'm Claudia Sangiorgi Dalimore.
And we're from Her Sound, Her Story.
And you're on Prymetime from the music.
Yes. Did it.
Michelle and Claudia, thank you so much for joining us. How are you guys feeling? Her Sound, Her Story, in the lead up to it? Excited, nervous?
All of the above.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Full in the mind.
Yeah, I think we've still got some kind of pieces that are coming together, but once that's all come together in the next kind of week or so, I think we'll both be feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah.
It's a long process, I think, when you're doing a project this big on this scale and it's been 3 years of your life. It's hard to really verbalise what you feel, I think. It's a really tricky thing to say.
So let's talk about this particular part. So last year you had the presentation exhibition. And this one you're doing a documentary. What's the ambition behind the documentary?
So last year we had an exhibition that was, I guess, a culmination of all of the photos that we'd taken over the past 2 years or so, which is about, I think it was 44 portraits in the end, which we presented at the Emporium as part of Melbourne Music Week, which was like a really beautiful installation in the Emporium, which included some of the sound bites from the interviews that we'd done, and was just, I think, a really good summary of what we'd done up to that point. We also did a concert as part of Melbourne Music Week, which was the opening night, which included some of the women that had appeared in the project up to that point. And then this stage of the project now is the documentary, which was always kind of, when we started out doing this project, was the end goal, was doing a documentary giving voice to the women talking about the specific industry issues. So I think there's so much conversation about gender inequality or just gender in the music industry, but there's no long form conversations. It's articles and there's statistics, but no one's actually sat down with the women and said, you know, how do you feel about these particular issues? Is it even an issue? Do you want to continue talking about this? What obstacles are you facing? Just kind of to put a bit of a narrative around that. And that's, I guess now with the documentary coming out, that's kind of the end goal.
Agreed.
Everything she said. Yes, agreed. I mean, the timing of why it's coming out now, for one, that was a mammoth year last year to sort of pull off everything that we did. Alongside that, we did also release 12 vignettes, and I just sort of chose out of all the interviews what I felt would sort of be a broad scope of the conversation and give visibility to all different kinds of women. And that went out with Rolling Stone. That was really awesome.
Huge.
Yeah, it was great to get their support. And I think after having done the concert and done the photographic exhibition and doing that and seeing the response of the entire project, and more than anything bringing together the days when we launched the whole event, both of them, a lot of the women stayed in the same house together. So we sort of had this 3-day experience with 20 artists all together for the first time. And it was like, you can't really top or describe what it was like to actually bring them all together. And so I think after doing all that, I was like, okay, I can see the story of what maybe needs to be told, because there's so much dialogue and conversation, but it had to get to the point where I was actually experiencing a little bit of what we were talking about to go, I think a full-length piece could come out of this and should come out of this. There's so much beautiful dialogue. Yeah.
You're shedding light on so many of these artists. I think it was over 40 or so. Is that right? 40.
I think we spoke to close to 60, but I think that actually pop up in the documentary is about 45, yeah.
So can you, I realise that you're sort of sharing their stories, but tell me about your stories and briefly who you guys are and how this sort of came to fruition, why it connected with you and why you wanted to do it.
Yeah. We're friends.
Yeah.
First and foremost, I think that's at the heart of the project anyway. It came from Michelle. She'd done a big project on Australian hip hop, and I guess noticed how many women were there that you shot?
Yeah, I think there was out of the 182 artists that I shot for Rise, I think 10 of them were female. So I definitely noticed, obviously, gender disparity with that project, and then the conversation kept coming up in the media about that same gender disparity across all of Australian music. So I thought for my next project, I definitely want to explore why that is. But I just didn't feel like photos would do that justice, which is why I brought Claudia on board and just thought that she's such a beautiful filmmaker and that we could definitely sit down with these women while I'm still taking photos, but let's have a chat to them and really try and understand these issues from the actual women, not just from, statistics and there's only 40% here and 20% here, like actually sitting down with the women and talking to them.
Mm. And when you were speaking to all of these women, did you find that there were particular issues and stories that were similar between them all?
Yes.
And what sort of
Yeah.
things did you come across? What sort of issues, let's go with?
I'm struggling to think of those now.
I guess the issues that we've
That's actually what I'm thinking about.
Yeah, the barriers that we've faced in our own careers would come up, which is really interesting, like just different roadblocks that you get that you might not even think is a gender thing, but sometimes it just seems like it's way harder, and then you hear the same stories from different women in the music industry, and you're like, that's happened to me so many different times.
It's like subtleties that you don't even realise happen, and then they do. There's been so many moments in the last 3 years where I turned around and was like, I'm just like them. It's a parallel. Like, she's saying, suddenly, I don't know, she walked into a room and someone was like, yeah, that's all right, but we're just going to shave a little bit of it off and, shift it around, and now it's really good. And the amount of times I came up against that whilst trying to bring people into this project to help, I was like, wow, you as a woman, you just give away power immediately without even knowing. And it's not even it's more so, I think, because there's a willingness to go, this person's suggesting something to me. Maybe they do know more than I know.
Yeah, so I think it's the lack of confidence in your own ability sometimes that's the thing that's come up all the time. So if someone's questioning you or telling that they've got a better way of doing it, and you just don't often have the self-assuredness to say, no, actually, this is my idea and my project and why I want to do it this way. That's definitely a thing that's come across the board from a lot of women, especially younger women. You kind of, as they get older, really come into themselves. You start hearing the interviews from the older women in their 30s and 40s and 50s, and they're just unapologetic. They really come into their own. But that's at the time where the music industry tells them that they're redundant. So you've got this really weird dichotomy of like, you're coming into yourself and you're creating your best art, but then the industry tells you that they don't want to hear from you anymore. So that we've found really interesting.
Touching on those points of what you're talking about, gender equality, and recognising that sort of privilege that that is obviously apparent and does exist is sort of what you're giving light to here. How do you find the reception has been? I imagine it would be, you'd have a lot of female support. Have you found the same from men as well?
I guess through the first part of the rollout, there wasn't a lot of dialogue other than the 12 vignettes, I guess. And they were, there definitely, we didn't have any negative feedback, but there wasn't a lot of male feedback, was there? We've noticed that a few times. There just hasn't been a lot of conversation
absolutely,
from men at all, really. But a lot from women saying that really touched, it really resonated with them. Random emails from people saying they were so inspired by, the conversations that they had heard through the 12 vignettes. So I think that just spurred us on to we're on the right track. It's a conversation that's made by women for women.
Completely.
So it doesn't really matter if it doesn't resonate with men, because it's not really for them in this particular instance, and that's okay. It's not to exclude them and to say you can't watch it, or that they wouldn't take anything out of it, but it's just not specifically for them or to inspire them in any way. And I don't think that's really a negative thing at all.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Why do you think that, I know I've spoken to you in the past, Michelle, about equality in festival lineups, for example, or recently we've seen in social media the Me Too campaign. Like, why is this still a conversation? Like, is there something that you can sort of pinpoint that the community isn't understanding in this conversation, particularly focusing on the music industry? I mean, I'm sure there
I
isn't
think-
one thing.
No,
but
it's so many different things. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, what am I thinking about? And I can't, it's because I read an article on it too. I naturally would think, and you can take that from the last question you asked, the way a male may hear information is very different to the way a woman may hear information. So therefore, I might go, this is a big problem that you're asking me to do something, whatever it is. And the guy that's asking me to do it might go, well, I don't see why that's a big problem. So it's just, I actually feel it's really simple, like fundamental miscommunication of, it's so hard to explain in words, but that in many cases, there's just there's so many unconscious things happening. So it has to be people calling each other out, even in a really great way of encouragement and going, hey, it might be better if you just did that. Or if you just spoke to her instead of him. Or
Just
don't say don't treat her like that. Or have you guys even tried to look for a woman for this thing? Like, just it's these real subtleties that it's sort of up to the individual and the collective around them to start infiltrating. Because on a broader scale, you're talking like the top tiers of power being appointed to really wholesome, well-rounded women, which then starts to, shift everything below them. That happening faster than individual people sort of taking action of their own accord, like I'd say start there more than anything.
Yeah, I was just going to say definitely the unconscious bias stuff comes into it, where you just, I think, when generally speaking the festivals are run by men who are putting bands on that they love. So they're not really thinking about it. I don't think they're actually meaning to just be like, no, we're not going to have women. It's just like, we're going to put the bands on that they like. It's just broadening your scope a little bit to see just outside your little frame of who you love and who your mates love. There's actually this whole world of really incredible artists that include women and people of colour and LGBTI people. It's just, there's a broader conversation. And all that means is that the fans get to hear more amazing, diverse music instead of this narrow little pocket that I really feel like a lot of people are listening to at the moment, because that's what they're fed. So the conversation where there can be resistance around this change, but it actually only means a more beautiful and awesome Australian music industry. So I think that's why it's really important to keep pushing.
And off the back of last year, you guys won the Unified grant. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Went into the front. Love it. I wanted to ask you what sort of avenues and opportunities that opened for you, because I think that there needs to be, and obviously what you guys are doing, needs to be some sort of influence on actually celebrating achievements. And because when you do that, I mean, I think it's a really positive thing. What sort of avenues did it open for you, and why should we be encouraging people to celebrate achievements and that sort of stuff?
The project was happening anyway, so it was a sum of money that's definitely going to be helping us to finish and be able to employ people that are professionals in their field to get certain things done that we can't do. For example, sound mix and animation and stuff like that. So you can't really, put a price on that sort of stuff. That's just going to make the end product look and sound way better than we could possibly have imagined. Having said that, the project would have happened regardless. So it's a real tricky one, because I guess there's two of us that have done the whole project up until a point, and it still would have happened, but I guess it just allows us to take it to the next level, so the final result is just way more professional.
Can I ask you both let's go with favourite, I'm sure there won't just be one, but some of the more beautiful moments you've had in creating this whole body of work that you sort of can look back on?
I can still feel it, and I think for me as the filmmaker within this project, to keep going with this documentary single-handedly, because it very much, Michelle is completely there every step of the way supporting me, but if I didn't choose to keep going, it just wouldn't happen. And I think a lot of that inspiration came from, like I said, when the women were all together, and that feeling and that sense of solidarity and community that I think a lot of artists, just in general, creative people, or just people in life. I mean, in Western culture, we're quite separated, insular in our existence, you know. So those states, when we were all together, I can't actually describe to you what that felt like. But if there's moments where I forget why we're even doing this, that's my reference point every time. It's so beautiful when women come together. It's like magic. It's the definition of
and
magic.
also without that, I think sometimes there's because of the lack of space that women are allowed, it sometimes lends itself to competition. So when that's removed and there's no competition and it's just this beautiful community, it's like Claudia said, you actually can't describe how beautiful it is and how powerful and how strong it is. And I think for us, like, seeing like even collaborations that came out of that. For example, Eka released her album last week, and there's a collaboration with Sampa. They met at our concert last year, and that's how that you can't put a price or words or anything on seeing something so beautiful come out of something that we created, because those girls just got along so well and bonded, and then they've made this, you know, amazing track that you just like, holy shit, that's incredible. That is like an end product of something that we happened to put them in a room together at one stage. So that sort of stuff just makes everything worth it.
I know that in the address of this documentary that you're making, you're asking the question of where we want women's voices to sit in the industry today. Where do you both want it to sit? How do you put it in your words?
Front, centre and loud?
Yeah.
No. Where do we want them to sit?
I think just with equal standing. Like, it's been such a male-dominated industry for so long. Like, there's if you look through history, even just trying to get someone on the Hall of Fame for the ARIAs, for example, trying to get a woman. I think the latest one that was released was Daryl Braithwaite as being accepted again, and someone was like, how's Deborah Conway not in there yet? Like, just little stuff like that. You're like, it's almost like sometimes women are erased from history. So if we can just have equal footing, like, that's what the end goal is. So if it's creating more space and that we can have an equal footing, and it's like women and men are equally creating the, you know, amazing music within the Australian music landscape, then I think job done, really.
That statement, though, that you just quoted from the bio, that for me is it's about a universal dialogue. So this is totally music industry based because of who we've spoken to. But if you were to just cut out all those bits as you're listening, it's just like the state of where we are, the current climate of the world and what it's doing politically, environmentally, socially. It's really important for people to start listening to women. And if you were to take that right back to listen to Mother Earth, and, you know, there's a big fundamental need to just actually start listening to women. And
lastly, where can we see, hear, if we want to check out the vignettes? Yeah, where can we check out her sound her story?
You can go to our website. So hersoundherstory.com has all of the vignettes from last year, which is great. It also has the tickets to buy for the cinema, which is happening on the 23rd of November at the Kino Cinema at 7 p.m. There's a very tiny amount of tickets left, so jump on and get that. It's the preview screening, I guess. It's an industry screening, but there's a small amount of public tickets. And there's information on the stuff that we did last year, and the rollout of there's a billboard campaign happening from now until kind of February as well. So all of that information is on the website.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for having a chat to us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Can't wait to see the documentary. It's going to be amazing.
Yes.
Thanks.
Awesome.